hey, if you're watching this, you're into reef stuff. We know it. You love it, right? This podcast contains words that some people don't like for work or don't like around their kids. We're not saying you should get a new job and get new kids. Okay, we get a new job and get new kids. But if you can't do that before you need to listen to this show, just don't do it at work and don't do it in front of your kids, because we're going to say words. So this is Reef Beef. On this episode of Reef Beef, me, Rich, and
me, Ben,
are going to talk about metal halides, Beckett skimmers. We're going to talk about books, the simplicity of reefing. This is a show that is sponsored by saltwateraquarium.com, Champion Lighting, and powered by PolypLab. And that show is Reef Beef. Benjamin.
Yes, sir.
How are you, sir?
Oh, man. I am not tired, but I just barely got here into the studio to record with you from working.
From working so hard? Where were you today? What interesting thing did you see today that you could tell us about?
Extremely interesting. So my 4 foot tall, 500-gallon reef tank that I took over.
Yeah.
So I clean that once a week. When I was there last week, I was gluing in a bunch of frags. I glued in a Duncan frag, Duncanopsamia axofugia, and there's a green chromis in there, 2 of them, like this big. I glued it in, and he or she started dancing around it, ripped it off, and threw it on the ground.
Yeah, that's the he.
Okay. And I was like, what the hell? But the funny thing, it landed in sort of like an armpit of a rock, and it's growing now. It's totally fine. So it's like, thank you. I don't know what that was, but thank you. So I get there today. He's doing these weird loops to where I thought something was wrong with him, and then started swimming normal. So I was like, okay, nothing's wrong with him. But then he was starting being very rude to other fish around that area that was at. And I got my face closer and closer, and I swear it looked like a big concentration of, on the back of a tank where there's not a lot of light, aren't those called foraminiferans? Those little white dots.
Sure, I like how you pronounce them. I think you're those snails.
Yeah, but, not the spiral ones. They're just like little white calcium dots.
Foramiferans.
Foraminins.
Foramininas.
No, but it looked just like those, and I was looking and looking and looking. I was like, son of a gun. So, man, I have cleaned so many tanks that have clownfish breed all the time.
Yeah.
Never had chromis breed. So that made me feel, feel good. I don't know.
That's great. I've only had that happen once. I had a 5 or 6 of them in a tank at the academy, and they would spawn all the time.
Do you know anything about that circular swimming?
Yeah, they're just damsels are assholes, and that's a damsel being an asshole. Protecting his cleaning or protecting the area that the eggs are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looked like someone whacked him in the head.
Yeah. When it was a big group, the female could come over, and the other 4 fish he would chase to the back of the tank.
Yeah.
So that's cool. It's a shame raising them kind of sucks ass.
Is it very similar to clownfish?
No, clownfish are easy.
Okay.
Damsels are not nearly as easy.
Okay.
Yeah, like clownfish you could do in a 5-gallon bucket or 5-gallon tank, right? These other guys you probably could, but you need to have more of a touch to get them through. Yeah. That's pretty cool though. Anytime you get something spawning, it's always exciting, I think.
Yeah.
Says the spawners.
I'm Carl Jim, and now it's weather.
Hey, Richard, saltwateraquarium.com is a place to go if you need aquarium supplies.
Keep going. You're not wrong.
They have an app. That's what Richard's going to show. They have an app where you can sit in your garage in your underwear and use your fingers to order things that you need.
What's new?
What is new?
It's loading. It's got to talk. It's got to talk to your house.
Yeah, that's what's wrong with it. But anyway,
so Jaguar gobies.
Jack. Oh yeah, they have livestock now.
Yeah. Efflux pumps.
Yep. They got all sorts of
A
goods.
bunch of livestock. Wow, they go through livestock pretty quick.
That's cool.
Bunch of out of stocks. They got frostbite clownfish.
Oh yeah, baby.
Yep. Half of it falls off and dies in 6 months.
Frostbite. Yeah. I see a Octopulse pump.
Yep. So they got a bunch of stuff. So we like them. They got 3 shipping areas, so you get your stuff actually pretty quick. I often order in the morning and it's shipped by that afternoon, and then it's to me really quickly. So, I mean, that's pretty awesome. Free shipping with orders over some number, which the website will tell you. I don't know the number offhand. Saltwateraquarium.com. We like them. They're fun people to talk to at shows, and they keep their grandpa in a closet. So when you order, use the link down below.
Yep.
And most importantly, write a kind of a haiku or a limerick in the notes field when you make your orders, so they know it's from Reef Beef.
I'm Curl Jim, and now it's weather.
What's going on here? I've had a few days to catch my breath a little bit.
Good.
So that's been kind of a miracle.
Not so much working on the house anymore.
Working on the house, but it's not like, you know, all the projects I was doing before, my brain needed to be paying attention full time. And now it's more like, oh, I can organize this or I can organize this. There's still a butt ton to do, but it's not like, oh God, what's wrong with the panel? And then have to think about that for days. Is anything going on back here? Nothing exciting. Babies. Corals. Baby corals. I got a picture somewhere. I started taking pictures again today. I had a moment. And anything going on under the house? Nothing exciting. Everything's just kind of going. It's I'm waiting for my 4-channel dosing pump and to figure out a place to put that. And I got my backup, my new Apex EB832s in.
Okay.
So I need to swap out some of the older ones.
How many do you have?
Running, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
My God.
But two of those are just for the battery.
Okay.
And then how do I have 7? Oh, because it's in different places, and it just made sense to put an EB8. The frag system has an EB832. The console system has an EB832. Upstairs, there's 1 and the battery 1. Under the house by the sump, there's 2 on different sides of the sump. So it's not there, it's not all different systems. It's, my system is distributed throughout the house.
I would classify you as a mega Apex user.
That's interesting. I want to talk about that kind of today. A mega Apex user. Well, tell me why I'm a mega user.
Oh, no. I mean, because you have 7 EB832s, but also too, I remember that Macna was years ago. I came over and sat next to you and you're like, hey, check this out. And you opened up your panel and I was like, what the? You had like chapter 1, chapter 2. I mean, since then I've seen other people who have, just, pages and pages of use, but yours is pretty hefty. But it was cool because also too, you turned your light on in your basement, looked at your bucket where that holds the skimmate,
turn the camera on.
Turn the camera on, saw that it was sort of full, and you're like, oh, so you pumped it out. And I was like, holy crap, man.
Yeah. So it's funny. I was thinking about this in the shower yesterday. Or was it on a walk? Maybe I was walking in the shower, because I wanted to talk about that. My approach, I think people overcomplicate reef keeping.
Oh, for sure.
And then I think people listen to our discussions, at least of my system, and think I have a complicated system. And I have a complicated system, but the way I reef is simple. The complicated system is just to allow me to be even lazier is all that's for. And I decided that the complication of the automation made sense to me, was worth it to me, to be able to totally ignore my system for a month if I need to, right? Except for food. That one's a little harder to deal with, I think, food. But the basics of the system is, you know, what do I got? I went with a big water volume because I thought a big water volume means changes happen slower. And I like that. So that's a hedge. I like biological filtration. So I've got live rock and I've got enough of it, whatever that means to you. And then I have a skimmer, and pretty much I run a skimmer because it's not expensive and it might help. You know, you certainly can run a tank without a skimmer, but, and then I do water changes and that's it. You know, I add some shit here and there, but I think I could stop all of it and probably wouldn't make a difference.
Well, you got a calcium reactor.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's just to help keep alkalinity stable. And I never touch that unless it's got a problem, which is my own fault. So right. So there's biological filtration. There's water volume, right? There's skimming. There's levels. So when you talk about the calcium reactor, I think things should be as stable as possible, but I'm not getting in contortions to, you know, lick my own taint to make it super stable. It should be stable within a realm, you know? So like, we were talking about this on the Discord. I like my alkalinity to be 8.7, right? And I've picked that because there's slop, you know, half, you know, 0.5 one direction and 0.5 the other direction. And I don't care about that slop. So like 8.3 to 9.3, anywhere in there, I'm fine. I pick 8.7 because it's right there in the center. I don't pick the low end of the scale, you know, 7.6 or something for alkalinity and DKH. Because if something goes wrong, it slides into a really danger zone very quickly. It's the same with salinity. This was actually a Steve Tyree thing. He was the first person I heard say this a million years ago, you know, running at 34, 34.5, because if there's a shift either direction, if your auto top off goes out or or your auto fill goes out, your salinity, you've got a bunch of time before your salinity gets to a critical point, either direction.
You know what's crazy? And I don't know if this was regional, but do you remember in the mid 90s where we were keeping reef tanks at, well, we were using specific gravity a lot. I didn't
1026.
Yeah, and we were keeping reef tanks at like 1.02122.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
That's fucking insane.
Like, if you keep it a little bit lower, you know, your salinity a little bit lower, and 1.2 is pretty low actually. 1020 that's low.
21 seemed to be the
right,
golden
because
standard.
20 is bad. 20 is low. But people like to keep it on the edge. One of the reasons was to help keep disease at bay.
But that wasn't exactly true. That's not low enough.
Yeah, but it was a mind story 20 or 30 years ago.
Oh, it was a big mind story.
Right. So as we learn, mind stories go away. As we don't learn, mind stories gather more power.
But
right?
I wonder how many people, you know, when we talk about, like, you and I have been done this for a while, like, I wonder if, you know, any reefers that don't have that much time under their belt, like, for real, in the mid 90s, everyone was like, keep your reef aquarium, whether it's you're keeping corals or fish, at 1.021. That was like the golden standard. And I don't remember at what point then I started looking at salinity, because now I do 35 parts per thousand salinity, which roughly translate to 1.026 specific gravity.
Right, which is pretty much normal.
Standard now.
Yeah. It was standard then, but you know, we couldn't keep stuff alive really well. So anybody, you know, anybody who had a mind story, you know, we would try it because
that's all we had.
Yeah, we nothing worked. Maybe this will work. So, you know, oh, maybe I'll put blood meal in my tank. You know, all kinds of shit was happening. So yeah, I like stuff in the zone, I keep my temperature at like 78 or 79. I find that if I keep things at 80 or above for too long, bad things happen. Salinity, I find high salinity 36.5. So if you sustain that, bad things start to happen.
Yeah.
So, so keep it mellow, right? All of that is pretty straightforward reef keeping. There's no crazy reactor. There's calcium reactor. That's easy.
Do you ever use carbon?
I use carbon, again, cheap, inexpensive. It's a nice hedge bet if something goes wrong. I certainly don't change it as often as I should.
Yeah.
I run ozone because it's set and forget. I never have to think about it. It comes on for like an hour every 4 hours, and it goes into the skimmer, and the Apex takes care of that. If I had to do anything, I wouldn't run ozone.
Don't you use the Ozotech?
I don't remember which one I have.
Cold Corona discharge.
I just bought a couple of them like 4 years ago, and the one I was using, actually the pump went out and water, or when the pump turned off, water siphoned through it.
Yeah, you're supposed to have a one-way check valve.
So I replaced that. Now I've got it going to the air intake of the skimmer. It's not actually bubbling into the skimmer itself at all. I dose some trace elements because I can, but I'm not crazy on it. So it's simple and straightforward. You have light, you need biological filtration, and then you need to keep your pollutants in check. That's really kind of it. I mean, all of those have details that, will fractal out into infinite detail, but it's pretty straightforward. And I think you reef the same way.
I do reef the same way, and I professionally reef the same way. It's not my method. It's just, keep it simple, stupid. It's my method mixed with other people's methods, and I could go all into it, but there's certain things I do that aren't really the norm. Like, so I love Kolar Labs carbon.
Yeah.
And then most people would think, oh, put carbon in a reactor. And I do agree with that. However, there's a company called Tideline that makes a bunch of different sort of products for the aquarium world, but they make a mesh a bag with a zipper, but it's long and skinny.
Oh, I know that bag.
Yeah.
I know that bag. That's a great bag.
I think it's 3 inches by 8 inches.
Yeah.
But I have a whole bucket and I fill them all with Kolar Labs and zip it up. I rinse but because you got to understand. So I don't do it passive in that, like old school people would take a bag of carbon, remember, and throw it in their sump.
Right.
Just like in a corner. I don't do that. Depending how big the tank is, it's like, oh, that's a 2-bag tank or that's a 1-bag tank, whatever. And I'm there once a week or every other week. I just have a little bag. I'll throw it in a baffle. You don't throw it in the overflow bag because that gets pounded and it puts dust everywhere. But you put it in a baffle or a fast moving part, in the tank. And again, I remember taking over tanks where people literally had like a bag with like a massive amount of carbon thrown in a corner. And it's like, that's not doing anything at all.
Yeah. Well, carbon, I'd like to see I've never actually looked for this. Maybe Beavers can help out. Is there data on passive carbon versus active carbon?
I'm sure there was some tests. So my thinking on this, I'm there once a week or every other week. It's a small amount of carbon. Everything that I've ever read. Now this is a mind story. This is a damn mind story.
100%.
But they say carbon does what it's gonna do, like for the first day that you put it in there. Who the fuck knows if that's true and what are the metrics on that? It's a mind story. So I'm just, like I change them every time I'm there. It's a thing that makes me money, but it also keeps the tanks very, very clear. Small amount, frequently changed, easy to change. I don't want to walk into a situation where I'm wrestling with if it's a giant tank, I might have to use a reactor. But, as far as that function, I'm changing water, clean the skimmer, grab the bags of carbon, throw 2 new in. I got to get moving.
Yeah. I do a reactor because it's easier for me. Because my sump's in the crawl space. So to change anything that I have to crawl into is a pain. And the reactors are all on the door to the crawl space. So I can change them standing up. Otherwise, I would put them outside, I suppose. And I have to actually get some new ones. I usually have extra inserts that I fill with carbon or the DI that I use, so that when I pop one off, I just pop the new one in and go. And then I, when I have time, I fill the next one and get it ready.
Yeah.
A lot of this is mind story either way, it seems pretty clear. I think there's really good data that carbon will clear the yellows out of your tank, but what else does it actually do? And again, is running it actively absolutely better? Is it partially better? Is it better because it forces water through it in a way that makes it so the stuff right in the middle doesn't get water passing through it rather than getting bypassed? Anyway, if you know of any direct studies or evidence about carbon active versus passive. So yeah, simple. People make it more than that. If you just start from that, you're in good shape to run down each little fork from each of those things. But I think people, we were talking about sand filters, right? And a sand filter is a mechanical filter. It's not a biological filter. And I think, most hobbyists don't use sand filters, and they're used to the idea of sand being a biological filtration medium. But sand filters are not that. Sand filters are floss. They're filter floss that you backflush to get goo out.
Man, we used those in the zoo when I was a zookeeper at the Houston Zoo. The main tank I was in charge of was a 4,000 gallon reef tank, but I was also in charge of a 12,000 gallon. It was called the Flooded Amazon.
Yeah.
And man, I mean, you call it a sand filter. This one had like that blasting gravel in it.
They're all sand filters.
But
They're
it was
all
the
same.
size of a freaking bedroom.
Yeah.
And it had butterfly valves on it. And I used to get, I remember, because you were supposed to turn it off and then change the sequence and then turn the pump back on. But I was able to like change them in a sequence, these butterfly valves, and just do like a 5,000 gallon back flush through there. Crazy big.
And if you don't do the back flush, it goes biological and bad shit happens in your tank and the filter stops filtering well.
If we took too long, it wouldn't back flush. And my boss at one time like opened the manway and we had to have a pressure thing and break it up. It got stuck together.
Yeah. So
I'm Coral Jim, and now it's weather.
Hey Ben.
Hey Richard, I bet you have a PolypLab thing.
I do. I have a box of sponsorship things.
When you're sponsored by PolypLab, you are powered. You're not sponsored by PolypLab, but you are powered by PolypLab. And when you're powered by PolypLab, you can literally feel it in your body.
Literally feel it. We're going to talk about their super glue. It comes in a pack of gluelets that we like a lot. It's enough to do 2 or 3 frags or get something done without making a big mess, or using a bigger volume of glue that then you have to close up again. So I like that a lot. So, and they've got some other stuff, but we're only talking about one thing a show. But here's one thing. Here's something else. And PolypLab. We're powered by PolypLab. Take us home, Ben.
Powered by PolypLab. Reef Beef is powered by PolypLab.
I'm Coral Jim, and now it's weather.
The basics: mechanical filtration, chemical filtration, biological filtration. I think in our systems, we don't know what's going on. Here's another thing that I was thinking of. It's dangerous when I have time. Is that I think people think there are answers to things in our hobby. And there are so many, because it's a biological system that's been studied. So there's going to be an answer, but there's not an answer for whatever sickness you have a lot of the time. Biological systems are totally complex. And even with people, we argue about what is right to make you better. Should you take zinc when you have a cold? Should you put your thumb up your ass when you have a cold? Should you take vitamin C? Should you sleep? It's the same mind stories with the complex biological system that is the human body. It's the same thing with the reef tank.
You wrote this in the show notes, and I had like not an epiphany, but I was like, boom, it's something that just struck a chord with me because I'm type 2 diabetic, so I get really into like nutrition. But boy, the field of nutrition, it's just ridiculous.
It's wackadoodle.
I mean, you say that the reef industry has mind stories like nutrition, diets, MCT oils. You got to eat. Saturated fat's not bad for you. Blah blah blah. But it reminds me so much of aquariums, because there's the people that do keto and they say, oh, it's okay to eat butter and fat and all this stuff. But if I do keto, a type 2 diabetic has problems with triglycerides. And so me eating keto is not great for me because it will make my cholesterol numbers go up. So that reminds me so much of like, oh, you need to run GFO. Well, depending on what other stuff you're doing on a reef tank or not, like, it's not just like no diet is one size. Keto isn't good for everybody. Vegetarianism is not good for everybody.
Right. So it's exactly like any ICP testing, it works for some people. Fine. A paleo diet, people can be fine and healthy. A vegan diet, they can be fine and healthy. Just a kind of average diet, people can be out, everything works. So finding out what doesn't work and what to replace it with is really hard. And I think people get into the weeds because they're searching for the thing that works instead of going, here's a big body of water that I'm keeping animals in. I'm going to try to keep it as stable as possible. I'm going to try to make sure there's flow. I'm going to try to make sure there's light. I'm going to try to give it the things that seem like they are important. Then I'm just going to fucking leave it alone.
But here's the problem, and we've had similar versions of this discussion before. But here's the thing that always bugs me in my head, because I spent so long of a time in retail, like I'm so used to helping the people that don't know anything about anything.
Yeah.
The problem I have is when, that's all for you and I are like multi-decade reefers. So we've tried things, we've seen things come and go, we've experimented with this is what we freaking do for a living, but the only thing I got to think is putting myself in the shoes of a new reefer. Like, you sort of don't know what you don't know. And you hear all these people messing with pH. You hear these people messing with ultra low nutrient systems. You see these people and you feel like, oh, maybe I got to do that. Maybe I got to do that. Are my nitrates too high? Maybe I need an algal turf scrubber. Am I doing, should I put in this stuff? No, I'm doing this. Should I culture phytoplankton and put it in my tank? Yeah, sure. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And it's like, I think the problem that I have with that is in your experimentation as a newer reefer. And hey, if you like to culture phytoplankton and you think it helps you and you like to do this, you like to do that. For me, that sounds like a motherfucking job. and what does it do? It could spur on a little bit of extra, pod growth. Okay. But again, it's I think reefing is all about your level of involvement that you want to have with your hobby.
Yeah. So feeding, right? Everyone's got the best food. Oh God, what do? I feed everything.
Yeah.
I feed a lot of flake food. I feed pellet food. I feed Larry's food, LRS, because I think it's got a nice blend all together. I'm done. I don't have to think about those bigger, meatier foods. I feed Acariomyces. I feed PE, and then I feed all kinds of different powdered foods for little tiny mouths. And why do I do that? Because I don't know what the right food is. I want to try to hit every base I can hit.
We change over time a little bit. Like maybe you start using the certain powder food and then you're like, man, I don't know, this is a mind story, but ever since I started using product X, like there's more algae on my front glass. So, I'm going to check my nitrates and phosphates and, I feel a little uncomfortable with that number. I mean, it's just all sorts of cause and effect,
Yeah. Yeah. And then you learn that you're just post hoc, chasing. It's the last thing you did. And then you go, wait a minute. Maybe it wasn't that I cleaned the glass and that's what made the dinos run away.
Yeah.
Maybe it was what I did 2 weeks ago. So yeah, I don't know what to tell new reefers. It's tough. They're just trying to do their best. And I guess, what am I trying to say? Your best is be as simple as possible. Get a theory you understand, and just, that's it, man. Be easy.
If you stick with the hobby, you're gonna get there eventually. Yeah. But we can't tell people how to take their journey. We can suggest.
Right, which is why another reason why I often stay away from new reefers, especially in writing, is because everybody is telling them what to do.
Yeah.
And I don't want to tell them what to do, because I think that's not a useful way to go. But I also understand that sometimes they just need to be told what to do. But, if you're on a journey that says Zeovit is the thing you're using now, I can't, don't talk to me.
Yeah, if you're bound and determined, if you're talking to someone, you're like, I'm going to do Zeovit. And you're like, well, that's sort of old and that's not been debunked, but it's like sort of that the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. And you're like, well, I'm going to do this. And it's like, okay, man.
Right.
Have fun.
Well, it's like, yeah, if you're into paleo eating and somebody talks to you about being a vegan, the paleo doesn't really have much to say about being a vegan because they're not a vegan. They can't advise you.
I mean,
that's interesting.
That's any endeavor. I was just thinking about that, because when it really comes to nutrition, like people it's almost like politics. Like people are going to throw down about it.
Oh, dude,
someone that's keto and they're going to punch you in the face, and a vegan is going to judge the hell out of you. And it's like,
when I
it's
lost
like religion.
It is. When I lost that weight in 2015, people went crazy, and it was all about, you have to eat this way and you have to eat that way, and what you're doing, you're going to die. And, it was just like, dude, just whatever.
Or like, you didn't do it right. That reminds me of aquarium stuff too.
Right.
Because
Which is why when I was losing weight, I didn't talk about it. Someone said, are you losing weight? I'm going, yeah, I've been sick. I don't want to talk to you about this because you're going to tell me a bunch of bullshit.
No, that's rad. If you're like, well, I mean, I'm sorry, people, but I'm just saying, like, no, it's cancer. And like, oh, Jesus.
It depended on who I was talking to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see it again if I lose the weight again.
Yeah.
But yeah, or the other one was, I'm in a cult and the master says I'm not allowed to talk about that. Because the goal was to seriously not talk about it.
Yeah. No, but like, just
but if you said cancer, then you had to explain. But if you kind of go, I've been sick.
Yeah, and people.
And if they push, you just gotta have AIDS.
Yeah, I have AIDS. It's AIDS. It's on my face. Yeah.
But it was actually the only select people you could do that to, because most people would then ask.
No, but just like aquarium stuff, like if you do Triton method, and then you're talking to me, like I try not to do this, but everyone just gets so like butthurt if you're saying like, man, I wouldn't do that. It's like, well, that's valid though, when people like, oh, I'm doing the Zeovit method, and I never did once do it, because I took one look at it and I was like, it's too expensive and there's too many bottles of what the fuck. And I'd be like, well, I wouldn't do that. And I think it is valid to say, well, did you do it and it didn't work for you? No, I didn't even try it. So that's only fair enough.
Yeah. And my current theory about why all of them work, every method produces good results, right? Except for the, shit in your tank and keep it at, 8 degrees Celsius. That's the not good method.
I'm Coral Jim, and now it's weather.
Champion lighting supply is good for your teeth and your bones. Champion lighting and supply is our buddies and our sponsors, and they're up in the Northeast, and it doesn't matter where they're at, because you could be in Zimbabwe and order, and you'll probably get it eventually in Zimbabwe. But anyways, they have a bunch of goods. They have some harder to find goods, some older stuff, and some stuff that is peculiar to them. And
This is
Richard right now is showing something that is peculiar.
This is Captivate, and I'm showing you just the empty bags because I've decanted them into a thing that I use to keep everything healthy. This is for planktivores, and this is even smaller marine plankton. They've got several different sizes, and I'm liking their food a lot. They've got like the smallest one
Really?
that I've seen.
Super fine.
Super tiny. And stuff seems to like it a lot. So Champion Lighting and Supply, championlighting.com. Use the link down below, and we'll talk to you later.
I'm Coral Jim, and now it's weather.
I can't think of his name, but there is a reefer in, I think it's Mexico City. I don't remember his name. And he has an insanely, we posted it on our Facebook page, a video of it.
Oh, that's the last thing I teased Jake about.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, because Jake translated, that's what that was.
That's right.
Jake translated something for him.
As he walked away from me, I went, oh yeah, play that video some more.
The tank is gorgeous though, and I don't know for sure, but it looks like he's using zeolite method because all the acros are like pastel color.
I didn't look too closely at it. It's on
but
the
that's how things work and they don't work. That's how you can't do a keto diet for 2 weeks and then say, oh, it didn't work for me. You did it for 2 fucking weeks.
Right.
Oh, I tried the zeolite method. It didn't work. How long did you do it? 1 week. You didn't fucking do the zeolite method then.
Right.
And you can tell that even though I don't like the zeolite method, this Mexican reefer has this tank and he fucking is doing it.
Right. So I think all the methods work
if you do it.
If you do it. And I think that's why like Triton and like Moonshiners, why people like them, it's because they get told what to do and then they go and do it. Whereas somehow the idea of, do a 50% water change every 3 weeks, people are like, that can't work. But if you go, add these bottles of potions, people are like, ooh, science-y. So yeah, keep it simple, right? That's all.
And Richard, the problem is like, I apologize. I keep making metaphors to nutrition, but let's say, you're like, I'm doing keto, but then you start like, mixing it with something else like vegetarianism. And then it's like, well, then what are you doing? So if you're doing the zeolite method, but you're really only doing half of it and you're mixing in the Triton method, and then you say like, this sucks, but you're also sort of like, if you're gonna pick a lane, stay in it. Yeah. I could tell a real life version of both of those stories. The first person I knew who did keto said, I'm doing keto, I'm not supposed to have any carbs. I'm like, why did you eat half of your bun? He goes, well, that can't make a difference. Yes, it does.
I was like, well, that's a total mind story. If the point is to have no carbs, you can't have some carbs and expect a result. Yeah.
He died. That guy died. Too, like you have to get a test kit and see if you're passing ketones. You don't just say like, I eat a lot of meat and fat, I'm keto. I'm in ketogenesis. You don't like it's more technical than that.
Yeah, and that guy died.
Are you serious?
Yeah, not from that. Like 20 years later,
a car hit him.
And he died from being a jackass. I think
that'll kill you. It'll kill you. You and I better watch it.
And then in reefing, it's exactly the same way. If you're doing the Triton method, and you also do water changes, right?
Then what are you doing?
You're not really doing it.
But I also have to say that after 25 years. Like I do a mixture of methods that are I do just like you, simplistic reefing, but it's like I feel I get how a new reefer would want a rigid structure to operate inside of. Yeah. I do not want a rigid structure to operate inside.
But you do have a rigid structure. It's just
that's true.
It's just the basic pillars of it is rigid. Biological filtration,
Okay.
clean water, light, food. Keep everything else. Everything else is details, right? It's not, we're going to balance like Zeovit does by absorbing one and doing another, and you got to clean something every day. I don't want to touch it that often. I want it
And
to,
$500 in little bottles.
and it's fine. If you want to do that, you should. But we're not doing a method. I think maybe that's what I'm getting at.
We are. But we aren't.
But we're taking principles,
Okay.
and we're applying them in a way that makes sense to us. And when we get new information, we modify how we do things or our principles.
See, that's so funny because I don't know this for a fact, but like a lot of other YouTube personalities, like aren't some of them out there like, we do this method. And it's like, people would be like, I wonder what Rich and Ben do. What's the reef beef method? And it's not some fucking rigid method. It's like Richard said, there's sort of like principles that we understand after having done this for so long. It's not a fucking method. I can't package it up and throw it at you.
When we were talking about, and we're still considering doing some smaller tanks, right? With dry rock or whatever it is to start out. I think we were talking about like doing a dry rock one.
I do it all the time.
I should do like a newbie tank, a small tank, to see how it goes. Do I get, can I not get, the uglies and things like that, right?
Richard,
And I know you do. I know.
I do it all the time. I did it last week.
I know we were going to do it real time, but that's not even the point. The point I'm saying is, people were saying, well, you've got to do it then, you can't use Bob's magic water. And it's like, I wouldn't. I would use water out of my system. So, well, that's not what everyone else is doing. And it's like, I don't want to do the things that make people get the uglies. I want to do it the way that I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get them. And that includes, I'm not making salt water just because I don't want to do that anymore. I think using rock that's been seasoned, right, and water that's been seasoned, that's the easiest way to go. Pico reefs, that's all you do is you just keep it warm, keep the water moving, and change the water once a week. It's, you get back to it.
In lieu of some filtration that doesn't work on that size level. No, I don't even think it's that. I think the biological filtration in a vase reef are totally good enough. I think you have enough surface area to feed that thing and keep those things alive. Just as long as you don't have a Flamingi tang in there.
Well, you want two if you're going to do that.
Two of them.
A gallon tank is super easy. It's way easier than doing any filtration. It's just pulling the water out once a week.
Yeah.
But and then if you're going to clean it, why not just pull everything out once a week too? It's everything is different depending on application.
I'm Coral Jim, and now it's weather.
Hey, we're just humble, poor, honest reef keepers who are doing a show for the good of the planet, save the world, and we need your help.
You pander bear.
No, but I'm a panda bear, but I'm going to pander to the people who are listening to the show who like us. We're an acquired taste, or you need to want to like us, and we appreciate that. What that means is that our audience is going to be smaller than it could be if we just pandered to everybody. So thank you for everyone who's been supporting us. The easiest ways to support us is to smash like and then share the crap out of the show everywhere, so more eyes on us. And then thank you to everyone who leaves a review on iTunes. And thank you to everyone who has become a member at the different membership levels and helped support us directly monetarily and got whatever benefits there is about that. We dig that, and we really appreciate it. It makes us feel like we shouldn't stop doing the show. And, and a lot, we needed a computer, and we were able to get a computer. We need to fly bend somewhere. We can fly bend somewhere. So it's pretty great. Well, citizens of the world, we sure appreciate your help. I don't know why anybody likes us.
I just smashed a can.
But if you do, we'll try to be nice to you.
Yeah. Bon voyage.
I'm Coral Jim, and now it's weather.
So, okay. So I just wanted, simple. simple foundational ideas then can get very stupid, right? So everything I do on the Apex is in support of those foundational ideas. I just have a system that's spread all over the house. And so I got a lot of modules and crap. One of the quickie things I wanted to go over real quick is to remind people to save their Apex programming. Let me share the screen. Let me know if you're seeing this. Okay, so this is my display tank. It doesn't mean anything. You might as well call them Apex 1, 2, and 3. And this is all the stuff that's on this Apex.
Wow.
Right? That's a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of virtual outlets because I like to dick around with flow a lot. And then I have switches to change lighting depending on what's going on. But here, let's make life easy. What are we talking about? We're talking about...
I like the pH in your calcium reactor, 666.
Oh, good. I love when that happens.
Just nail it there.
That's really the level that using the medias I use that I like it at. And boy, I'm happy every time it reads that. And I take a screenshot
Hail Satan.
right now. Anyway, people are looking at my Apex Fusion screen. So why do you want to back all this up? If something goes wrong and you need a new Apex, it'd be really nice to have all the data on it, right? There's some ways that you can move it over if everything is set up exactly the same, but as it turns out, it's actually pretty easy to do it from a backup. And the backup, I mean, is you generate a PDF of all the code. So I'm going to show that to you now. You go up to the name of the Apex up here in the upper left, and you go down to summary. Click on summary, and it will give you this screen. And on this screen, you can scroll down. Mine's like 40 pages, but it tells you all the devices and what they're connected to.
Oh,
but
and your programming?
Here's all the code. Right? So here's the code for my the frag tank sky. I can just if I have to replace my sky, I can copy this code into the new sky and boom, it's there, right? That's my alarms. I want to see, here's the wave in the frag tank with what it does. You can just copy that. So if you have to replace your Apex, at least you'll have all this.
So you can download that and just have it like in a file on your computer?
What you do is you go up to this little print box in the upper right, and you hit save as PDF.
Oh, okay.
And I do that every couple of months or when I've made a big change. Yeah, and there you go. And you can see the whole thing there. So if you need to move everything over, you've got it somewhere else. If you can't, it's just a dumb thing not to have in case something goes really, really wrong with your Apex. Yeah. That's all. I'm going to stop sharing the screen unless you have any questions about this.
No, it's awesome.
Let's see. Oh, look at this.
Do you think a lot of people know that, or you think a lot of people don't know that?
I think some people know that and they forget to do it. And then I think most people don't know that. Remember, when you get into Apex, man, there's a learning curve, right, of the controller. So you're just learning all kinds of crap. There's stuff I don't know about, and I get reminded about them, and then go look at it again. We could look at Mark Levinson's Reef.
Did he have you look at it at one time?
He gave me access in case something was going on, and he wanted my opinion.
Oh, okay.
A bunch of people have access to mine.
Turn everything off.
There we go. No. Okay, 2 other quickies that I wanted to do. Fluconazole. In my Magna talk at the end or at the beginning, I kind of say, yeah, people have good results with it, so use it. I'm gonna walk that back a little bit. It's antifungal, and it might be very important for people. And so when something becomes very important for people, I am less apt to want to say, go ahead and use it. I would say exhaust everything before you do it.
Because overuse of it could affect its usefulness to people.
It could make it less effective. For the same reason we don't use tetracycline anymore.
Yeah, because tetracycline doesn't even work anymore, right?
Right, and it used to be the Cipro of the 80s.
Huh.
Yeah. And then the other thing, we talked about electrical stuff last few shows. We talked about safety, and we're planning on doing a show where we go into this more in depth with probably Jim Telegram.
Yes.
Oh, and he says we have to have a drinking game. Every time there's an acronym, you have to drink. So I think that's
Oh, great. He was in the military, so we're gonna just be dead drunk.
No, people watching. I guess we can do it too.
Just don't drive.
Don't drive. We mentioned GCFI, ground fault circuit interrupters, and a lot of people brought up arc fault circuit interrupters,
Which I didn't know. I have to tell you, I didn't really know about.
Yeah, they've come into I did a bunch of reading on them. They've become in prominence in the last few years when they've become regulation. Like in California, all new construction needs to have, I think, AFCI in certain rooms. Right. So here's another thing about, talking about mind stories and overcomplicating things, and food and reefing. Electrical is the same thing. Do you need surge protectors? Do you need AFCI? Do you need GFCI? Some people say don't ever put a GFCI on a pump that is your return that you care about, because GFCIs can trip. Notoriously, they trip, and then they turn off your pump.
Yeah, but then I would say, not everyone has an apex, but I would say, a pump turning off is more important than you getting electrocuted.
Sure. But what I'm saying is people look at it differently. So the ground fault circuit interrupt, and the simple version of this, as I understand it, is that's to protect your life, right? Something goes bad, that pops so you don't die. The arc fault circuit interrupter is to stop things from burning up.
Will an AFCI protect you? Protect you?
No, but there are combo units that do both.
Okay.
And you can get those either as breakers or as receptacles, plugs, but there's no straightforward answer here as to what to do.
But again, this is just like reefing in that
exactly.
It's like a forum. Like, who the fuck are you talking to? Just Joe Bob 249 on the electrical forum says, no, don't ever use GFC. Who are you?
Right.
And then I would call up an electrician. It's like, no, you should blah, blah, blah. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Then you talk to another electrician, they tell you something completely different.
It's true.
Right.
It's
so,
true. Same thing with doctors.
I probably looked at 10 electrician videos on YouTube about this. And the ones that I like said, if it's code, we don't care. If it's code, we're just going to do it. And it's like, oh, okay. That's the right answer. That's the reason for regulation, right? Right there. Yeah. Someone has decided this for me. Although people will, intentionally make their cars use more gas. So people are weird, right? So it's all, you gotta, I always talk about what's your reef keeping philosophy, articulate it to me, and then we'll help support that. Or I'll try to convince you that something else is maybe more important, and that will change over time. And you should reef only in the way that it makes sense to you. And it's the same with everything. There's no right answer. And I think people think there are right answers. Maybe it's not just reefing. In electrical, I was looking for the right answer about AFCI. And there isn't really one. There's some people who say, don't ever use it. And there's some people who say, well, you could use it, but it's a certain type of motor that turns it off. And, that's just something you have to live with. And it's like, well, can I live with that?
But that's even sort of like reefing. It's anything that you can go down a damn rabbit hole on.
Right.
And then, after hour 2 of reading this on the internet, you're like, what am I trying to be, an electrician or something? I just wanted to know, this is just like reefing. All these things are just like reefing. I just wanted to know what the hell an AFCI was. Now it's like, now there's 5 electricians arguing.
I was talking about surge protectors, right? And someone said, oh, just get a whole house surge protector. But if you go down that rabbit hole, they don't recommend you just get a whole house surge protector. They recommend you cascade it down.
Okay.
You have a whole house surge protector, and that'll protect you mostly from lightning strikes and stuff. But if you have the strip plugs that are surge protectors, those are going to directly protect those electronics. So you've got, And there's two other versions. There's 4 versions of surge protection that you can do to your house. So what's right for you? I don't live in an area where we get lightning strikes.
Yeah.
So I probably don't need a whole house surge protector, and it will kind of do what I want. Now, both on surge protector and the AFCI, I want to talk to my electrician, my 2 electricians that I know and trust, who will give me the straight dope and will also say, I don't know, before I even think about adding it. Because I think arc fault circuit interrupter, every time, that picture of the plug I showed you that was melting, I showed that 2 versions of that.
Yeah.
Right? That's what an arc faults will stop that.
It would just trip.
It will trip. And then you can go through and hunt like we are used to hunting for GFCIs now.
Okay.
You can do the same thing with the AFCI, or you just look at shit till find, oh shit, and you get rid of that one. But we'll get into more detail about that in another. Enough people pointed out that we didn't mention that I thought it was important that we do mention that. Book time. Okay, let's Rochambeau for who goes first.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Scissors. We both did scissors.
That's rad.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Are you paper?
I'm paper.
Oh, you're covering me up.
So I'm going first. I don't like this rock, paper, scissors, shoot thing, but that's a Texas thing. Are you ready? This is my favorite book. Are you ready for this?
Go.
I guarantee you've never heard of this book, but it will become your favorite book.
I have one like that as well. Oh my God. What?
God Made Fish.
You know what? I don't even need to read it. It's just like, it just gives you, can't argue with it.
We're reading it.
Where did you get that?
My daughter's best friend gave it to me.
Gave it to you?
Yeah, when she was like 10.
Man.
And she signed it.
Wait, a 10-year-old was trying to proselytize?
God made she's hip to the skinny.
Okay.
God made you special and his light is always shining. Love, Etta. God made fish. God made goldfish swimming in a bowl. The fish you catch using a pole. He made sharks and stingrays too and placed them in the ocean blue. Wow. Some fish can walk, some can fly, but my favorite fish are those you fry.
Wow, Jesus.
Some can be pets, smaller than puppies. A good kind to raise are colorful guppies. But the whiskered catfish and electric eel are fish you never want to feel. God made the salmon and the rainbow trout that like to swim and jump about. The seahorse was also made by the Lord, and he gave one kind of fish a sword. Well, actually a bunch of kind of fish. And now we're about halfway or third through the book, and it takes a turn. We're talking about not fish.
It had like a proverb.
It goes on about not fish, and I don't. So you only need God. Jason. When you get this book, you only need the first half.
Oh my God! God made fish, and don't you forget it. I don't know. That's semantic. They're like, God made fish, and like, I love the ones you can fry. It's like, what the fuck?
Well, it may not be the greatest reefing book in the world, but
probably not.
But it's pretty awesome.
You didn't read through that and glean like one.
Yeah, in the back, Jesus is a zeolite reefer.
Ah, I knew it.
That's why I didn't want to.
I mean, if anyone
can nano bubbler, he's a nano bubbler.
If anyone can pull off ultra low nutrients, it's Jesus.
Yeah. UNJS.
My book was written by a friend of mine, and I didn't know. I was going through my books, and I didn't even know I had this book from him. And to be honest with you, I didn't even know that he wrote this book. So my friend is James Fothery, and he had this like a simple, like a, just the super simple guide to corals, coral biology, the basics of husbandry, propagating corals, guide to common corals, tips for selecting coral. He did a really cool thing.
Man, that fits in so well with what we were talking about earlier.
Just simplicity.
Here's some foundational stuff.
It's even, man, when did he write this?
1939, just before Hitler rose to power.
No, James is only a little bit older than me. 2004.
Yeah. That's great.
And then it has, you know, trichophilias, it has some identification, it's super simple. I mean, probably
Oh.
comes with crayons.
I've got.
But James Fothery,
Yay,
I would love
James.
to have him on the show someday.
We will. We're trying to get organized to have experts. We both love James.
Yep.
All right, we got one more thing to talk about, and then we'll get out of here. There was a lot of discussion over the last week or so about metal halide, and are they better than LEDs because they have a bigger spectrum? And I think we need more data. Meh. It seems pretty clear that LEDs grow coral just fine.
Mhm.
So I want to know what the juice is from going to halides, right? There's got to be a good reason to do it. You know?
I mean,
and some people and look, people who think halides are the shit, more power to them, right? They have a reason. They think it. They make bomber coral.
they
do
certainly
everything
grew
great.
corals.
The question is that transferable to the bulk of reefers, and why? So I want to know, first of all, what's better, because it's not like mixing foods, or it's not like, you know, throwing a bag of carbon in. It's not cheap and easy. It's a fundamental pillar of reefing that you are going to have to make a decision about. And LEDs are more convenient, more stylish, more controllable. There's a lot of good reasons to go with LEDs, and they grow coral. But if you like metal halide, I'm not going to give you grief on that.
Here's my Houston, Texas statement about that is that ship ain't gonna turn.
Well, that's true too.
It's not, halides are not coming back. The popularity, the Google searches and places like Champion Lighting Supply getting phone calls about halide systems, that might see a blip, but that ship ain't turning.
Yeah, the world has changed. You know, the reason we used halides in the first place is because other industries used them, not because they were made for our industry. When plasma lights were a thing, remember those? The rice lights? Those were cool. You know how we got them for our industry? They went through, they bin them by color temperature. And so they try to make the one that they're going to use to make military flashlights that go 5 kilometers, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're going for. We have a bin of rejects here. Oh, that's in the same spectral range that reefers use. Somebody told me about that. Maybe here's an application, right?
People don't realize that our industry is so small that a lot of the technologies that we get are cast off from some other bigger industry.
Yeah. Now, so you could get some artisanal, you know, maybe Tulio's a artisanal reef metal halide guy, maker. You know, I'm not sure where the Reef Bright bulbs are made, but they're already artisanal because he made the dual arcs.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I don't think they're coming back, but that doesn't mean they're not going to be in use. So this was my metaphor it's metal halides are the vinyl records of reef keeping. You know,
like hipster type situation.
People, you don't even have to like hipster it or make it negative or give it a connotation. There are people, audiophiles, who are very serious about music, and they prefer to listen to their music on vinyl.
Yeah.
Right. There's something about that experience that they enjoy, and more power to them. Right. I'm going to stick with MP3s because I don't have that in me to want to set up time and space for the, you know, for playing records. I have records upstairs. I have no record player.
And I suppose that's true. I'm not on that train because I wouldn't be. I love cool audio, but I'm not an audiophile. I've heard people say that like warmer tones, and you can hear imperfections that you can't hear, like real-time imperfections, like fingers sliding across strings and stuff like that.
Mind stories.
Maybe. But is that not like expensive wine? Where you think
that's a total mind story. Every study on wine is that no one can taste shit.
Well, yeah, you have $1,000 bottle of wine and a $10 bottle of Kroger wine, and people pick
Yeah.
the $10 Kroger wine. They're
So
like,
there's other vinyl records in reef keeping too, right? People swear by Beckett skimmers. I know
Yeah.
you and I both know people today who run Beckett skimmers because they think there is something in that they think makes their reef better. And I am not going to give them any crap about that.
That feels just like halide in that, man.
That's what I mean.
Halides grew the shit out of corals, but they're hot and you're likely going to need a chiller and blah, 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 blah.
Right. But
they're also not really handy much anymore.
But if you're a person who loves halides, I'm fine with it. If you're a person who loves Beckett skimmers, I'm fine with it.
You're
right?
going to need a monster pump to run the Beckett, and they still get dirty too. There's
all kinds of reasons why they have fallen out of mainstream favor, and those are important reasons. But where I part ways with people is when they try to convince people that everyone should have vinyl records.
Or is it saying like we fucked up, we got to turn back around, and this thing we had forsaken it, and it's really better?
I think most people believe what they're selling. I think real scam artists who are intentionally trying to fuck you are not as prevalent as people make them. And I think in the reefing world, they're few and far between. There's just not, it's too hard nowadays to be a complete scam artist in the reefing world, simply because we're not big enough. You know, you can find scams in the reptile world all over the place. You know, if you want an Aldebra tortoise, I can find you an ad in 12 seconds that says send them a money order for $150, and then they'll send you a tortoise for $2,000. That is a scam. We're not big enough for that, and our stuff is not expensive enough for that, luckily. So I think
what about named corals?
Named corals, there are scams on named corals, and people get scammed. But because it's a smaller group of people, you know, there's a group called Saltwater Scammers on Facebook where people talk about, you know, sometimes it gets crazy, but they're like, hey, I got scammed. What is this? And then people kind of know. It'd be nicer if that was all public, but I understand that it's not.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm saying that they're not rampant in the same way as they are in other areas. People do get ripped off every once in a while. You know, some online seller shows up, promises they're going to send a bunch of stuff, takes your money and doesn't. But
well, if you're going to set up to be a con artist, why would you jump into a relatively tiny industry? Like, you know, we were talking about a lot earlier. Look at the nutrition industry. There is shit tons of scams.
Yeah.
In there, because that's big money.
I was saying that I think people generally believe what they're saying. You know, Chris Meckley, right? ACI, he's a big proponent of metal halide. And I can see some reasons why that makes some sense. And there's, you know, I haven't been there yet, so I don't know exactly what he's doing. But I could see importing wild corals, perhaps wanting to, as they come in, put them under halide to transition. But then I also might want to be thinking about transitioning to LED, because most of my customers down the line are going to be LED'd. So there's all kinds of stuff. But Chris has got his reasons, and Chris has got bomber corals. So I can't really, you know, I'm not going to say Chris is wrong. And the fact is, Chris is not wrong. What works for Chris works for Chris, and Chris should do that. The danger becomes when other people go, Chris does it, so I should do it, without fully understanding the difference between having a 30-gallon tank and having 1 million gallons of aquaculture, right?
Or even what Chris is trying to do, which is get stuff in and get it to market as quick as possible.
As healthy as possible.
He would, and I don't know if Chris would agree with that, but I'm just saying, like, again, there's things to learn from that, but it doesn't mean that the way that ACI does its grow out systems is something that's how you need to do your tank at home.
Right. So, but at the same time, 'cause I want to make sure this is clear. The way I reef and the way you reef, same exact thing. There's no reason why anybody listening should do what we say either. We're not, and I don't think Meckley is either, running down a recipe telling people they should do it. I think all three of us are essentially saying, here's what we do and why. You should decide for yourself what works for you. And boy, we all want more data so we can make this decision even better.
Well, case in point on what you just said. So that earlier when I described how I do carbon, if I was a hobbyist at home, just get a little reactor. Because why am I doing that with carbon? I'm doing that because I have to get in and out of somewhere. If you're a hobbyist, you don't have to get in and out of somewhere.
Right.
So
and
just
why
get
not,
the damn reactor.
Right. And why not hedge that bet even also with the reactor? Hedge the bet that active water through carbon makes the carbon more efficiently than passive. So why not? That costs you a one-time cost that's not that much.
And if you're a hobbyist, you're not really on a time constraint per se. You
Right.
probably don't want to dick around with your tank all day, but
for the first 6 months to 2 years, you should dick around with your tank all day.
to learn it.
That's how you learn it. So I'm saying that metal halides are fine. LEDs are fine, right? We don't have enough data to decide that one is better and by how much.
Yeah, we don't.
I'd love to. Maybe we will. But we can stop fighting each other over these things and have discussions instead. And I think people want to take a side and want to champion and want to argue. And I'm all for that. But I want us to remember that the argument is based on mind stories.
But in arguing without data is silly.
It can be fun to a point. It gets silly really quick, right? So, next time we talk to Chris or Amanda, and have time, I want to talk about this, right? And we might get heated in that argument, in that discussion, back and forth, because we're having fun exploring ideas, not because we're trying to be right.
Yeah.
And the reason we're trying to be, and it's a challenge to both ways, because I talked with Chris about pH and it was just like this. It was, we were digging at it to get to when can we get to bedrock, and can we get to bedrock, and what do we actually mean? And I was like, oh, we don't really disagree at all. We disagree in a tiny spot here, which is fine. We should disagree in a tiny spot. So, yeah. I like artisanal stuff, as long as it's not like chèvre on pizza. People who make stuff because other people want it, specifically in a small market, that's wonderful. That's fantastic. Yeah. So, you
could say like pottery made by a machine, or you could say I like artisanal pottery from this artist down the street because I can see their thumbprints.
So I hope Tulio is like sitting in the garage in his underwear, assembling metal halide bulbs in a vacuum machine and sealing them.
Yeah. With a cigarette dangling off of his lip.
That's a callback to another story. We don't think Tulio's actually anywhere in his underwear.
Yeah, we don't think Tulio wears underwear.
No. So anyway, what's the upshot? The discussions are nice. The fights are boring. Stop fighting.
Important.
And know when the discussion's over. When you presented a bunch of stuff and I presented a bunch of stuff, and we realized that the only thing that's going to move us anywhere is a little more data or a lot more data, then it's time to talk about, something else. Let it die. And then
someone comes in with ad hominem and it just starts to be character assassination.
It's not a fight to be won. It's a discussion to be had because it's interesting. If you're uninterested in it, don't pay any attention to it. And at the same time, don't go looking for a magic bullet to fix your tank. There are no magic bullets. There are just your understandings. And we think simple is good. Anything else, Ben?
I think we have kicked that horse.
Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching and supporting us however you do that. We do it because you seem to want us to. And I want to thank saltwateraquarium.com, Champion Lighting, and PolypLab for powering us. They've been our sponsors for a long time, and we certainly appreciate them. See you on the Discord. Have a good time.
This episode hosted by Richard Ross and Ben Johnson, produced by Richard Ross and Snowman, edited and directed by Snowman. Thanks to our Prime and Gold level beefers, Russell, Pedro, Scott O, Robert S, Jason C, Corey, Rich P, James B, Ryan H, and Scott C.
Snowman's gonna cut this out.
Yeah. Wow. Did you see me fuck that up and just fucking U-turn and not care?
And you said halide weird too.
Oh, yeah. Like you don't say every word weird.
You
say words so weird now. I don't know how I think they're pronounced.
Duncanopsamia axiphagia.
There's one thing you need to know about me. I'm a hypocrite.
Aren't we all? Beetlejuice.
Okay, I guess we could do a show. Are you ready? What do you need?
No, I need you, baby.
So yeah, excuse me 1 second.
Oh, just walk away. He's either vomiting or urinating, or maybe he's getting something pertaining to what he's talking about. Maybe he's getting a bag of peanuts. Maybe hunger. Maybe like hunger struck him. It's possible he has explosive diarrhea, or maybe someone knocked on the door. And here he is.
There was just some stuff I have to do. So I can't even talk to you anymore.
I don't even know you anymore, man.
It's like one day I couldn't spell was, and I would write it down. I would go, that can't be fucking right.
I've done that before. Yeah.
I'm the Coral. I'm Coral Jim.
And now it's weather.
No, do it. Who are you? I'm Coral Jim.
And I'm Polyp Patty.
And on the morning commute, we're going to talk to you about traffic.
Well, there's reeferoids spilled across the highway, so traffic is snarled.